Hi, my name is Ashley Frazier, and today I would like to talk to you a little bit about single-payer healthcare. In the current 2020 Democratic primary election, several candidates have been discussing the option of single-payer healthcare. While that sounds very promising, there are a lot of drawbacks. One of the most well-known propositions right now is by Bernie Sanders, the Medicare for All Act. Medicare for All says that it's going to cover all Americans, so no longer just the groups from ages 65 to older and the disabled, but those from birth till death. That's a lot of people. And in the current funding for Medicare, it's not going to work. We're going to need more money to be put in, and we're going to have to figure out a way to get that funding. So Bernie Sanders always says taxes. We can tax the wealthy, a 1% option, which sounds great, except for if you really sit down and think, Bernie Sanders first has to get elected, then get this bill passed, so then we'll all have Medicare for all, but then he'll still have to get a wealth tax passed to actually fund the Medicare for all bill. So we're going to pass a bill with no funding and hope, cross our fingers, that we're going to get the funding we need to cover the program. There's no guarantees in politics, as we've known from the several government shutdowns in the last few years. Do we really think that once a Democrat is elected and gets this Medicare for All plan in place, that we're going to have a House vote to approve also a wealth tax? I don't really think so. And I don't want to bet on the likelihood and end up with a huge deficit. Speaking of deficits, several groups have cited huge amounts of money that will be needed to be pulled from the government to cover the costs. Almost $32 trillion over the next 10 years. 10 years, $32 trillion? That may not seem like a lot of money to you, but that's a lot of money to me. Another thing that we need to consider is part of the option of single-payer healthcare system is eliminating private healthcare. So if you have plans like Kaiser, Blue Cross, Sutter Gold, bye-bye to those plans. And that may not matter to you because you don't really care about your healthcare plan, but what about those people that work in all those jobs? All those people will be laid off. All those people that work for Blue Cross, that do eligibility, that help you sign up for your plan, that help process your payments, the people that work at the hospitals that go through the insurance, deal with billing, go through authorizations to get your healthcare coverage taken care of, all those people are going to be without jobs. Actually, there's an estimated 1.5 million hospital, clinical, and administrative roles that will be eliminated due to Medicare for All. And that may not matter to you because you don't work in healthcare, but in the last decade, back in 2008, 2009, there was a recession in this economy. And while it seems that we have bounced back currently, there has been several trends in the last 2 quarters that the economy is slowing. So with 2020 coming, a possibility of an economy slowing down, and then another possibility of layoffs for 1.5 million Americans, that doesn't seem like a step forward for us. I don't know what you think, but I think that might be a step backwards. Another issue with healthcare, if you're not worried about layoffs, you're not worried about companies closing, and you're not worried about spending, what about spending on your healthcare? So part of the plan to cap the spending is to mirror what countries like Canada and England have, which is a global budget cap. A global budget cap means that every year, just like we do the federal budget in every fiscal year, we're going to say we're going to spend so many dollars. Well, what happens when we reach that so many dollars threshold and you need a life-saving procedure, or your loved one survives a car accident but needs physical therapy? Do they not get that? Do they get sent home to go wait for the new fiscal year to then get the physical therapy? Studies show that waiting for physical therapy after strokes, there's a really short window of time that you can actually get well. So if we were to delay that, people's overall recovery could be delayed. What if your medications are no longer able to be prescribed because we've reached our max for the year? Okay, so you say they're not going to do that. They're not going to cut off medications. They're not going to cut off life-saving surgeries. That may be true, but then that means that we're going to go even further into debt. And our current state is that we're falling into debt already with more funding, more taxing. that's not going to fix anything. It's going to keep us in a big black hole. So, while it seems great that we can have Medicare for all, it doesn't seem like it's possible with the funding. So you may say, what about the other countries? Other countries have universal health care and single payer systems. Well, single payer health care is not universal in all the nations. Certain countries actually still allow private insurance, like countries like Germany and Switzerland. So they actually have nonprofits that do the private insurance instead of for-profit companies, which could be a proposal, but is not in the current proposal for Medicare for All. That would just eliminate it altogether. Another thing is elimination of copays. No other nation is doing that. People have to pay into their plans. So how are we going to just pay for everything without anyone paying in? Bernie Sanders hopes that he's going to be able to drive down costs by setting these strict rules that if you don't play with us, you can't play at all. But there's no guarantee that people are going to bend, because the same goes for the other companies. If you don't play with us, you don't have any services. So they have a lot of bargaining power, and while Bernie Sanders and other Democrats may think that we have the upper hand, we may not. They can always go to other companies, other agencies. It's not just insurance providers, people. I am talking about supply companies. They can go to Canada, they can go to Mexico and send their dialysis supplies. And then if we can't get dialysis supplies because they don't want to deal with our stuff, our patients suffer. While some of these things may be extremes, they all could be possible under a uniform healthcare system that cuts funding. Hospitals, for example, only receive a portion of government funding when they receive services. So, for example, at the hospital, Medicare only pays about 86% of total hospital services. So what hospitals are able to do to make up the difference is they negotiate with private insurance companies. Some private insurance groups actually pay up to 144% more just to cover the shortfall that Medicare and programs like Medi-Cal leave behind. Without these programs, these hospitals are going to face deficits. And again, we face layoffs. And layoffs are, once again, not good for the economy. So all these things are very important to consider when we're going to vote this year. And when we're voting in the coming years, when we're voting on healthcare. While there does truly need to be a healthcare reform, it may not need to be Medicare for all. So you may wonder, what is the other solution? That I don't know, my friends. But what I do know is that we need to research and be responsible with our spending and our funding. Money does not just grow on trees. Taxes seem great, but they may not pass. What will happen is similar to the Affordable Care Act. We make promises such as everyone's going to be insured, but now currently there are still 29 million Americans who do not fall under insurance protection under the Affordable Care Act. While taxes have increased, people cannot afford their health care benefits. Their copays have gone up, their deductibles have gone up. All these promises that were once made several years ago have fallen through. The same thing can happen with Medicare for all. We have to weigh out all the risks. We have to think clearly. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you really think about the vote this year.